As we continue our discussion of labor supply, let's now consider the effects of income and substitution on this labor-leisure trade-off model that we've developed. So let's take a look at this model. We see the same model we've looked at in the prior segments. We've developed this with 16 hours of leisure giving us 0 income, or 0 hours of leisure, which is the same as 16 hours of wage, or labor rather, giving us $320 of income, which suggests to us that we have a wage of $20 because we have a slope of 20 here. So that makes sense to us. Now, if this individual who is represented by this particular model has a need for an income change, a change in income from $160 a day, let's say, to $200, then what would that look like? Well, the individual could simply increase the number of hours of labor, which means they're decreasing the number of hours of leisure. So they increase the number of hours of labor if it's at $20 an hour to get to the $200 budget that they need. So we now have 10 hours of labor, which means we have 6 hours of leisure. What we looked at here then is assuming that the wage is constant. So if the wage is constant and we've seen this change in income, then we must have seen a change in leisure hours of -2, which brought us to 6 leisure hours instead of the 8 that we actually began with. Which means, if we think about how this affects our relationship, our income effect relationship here, that a change in hours divided by a change in income, given wages being fixed, is going to be equal to a positive change in income, a negative change in leisure hours, which is going to give us a negative change all along, which is then less than 0. So that's what we're looking at here. So all we've seen is that assuming that our wage remains constant, if our income is changing, then it must yield a negative change in leisure hours. Let's think about how this might look with respect to then the substitution effect. Substitution effect is going to be a little bit different. We're going to look again at some change in hours, but we're looking at a change in wage now as we are holding our income constant. So if that's the case, a change in wage, well, change in wage is going to increase the slope or change the slope of our curve. So let's say the wage has moved to $25 then, which if the wage becomes $25, so it's a positive change, of course. Now that's going to change our curve here. It's going to go from 0 to 400, which means that we're going to see some kind of a change in our leisure hours if our income is staying constant at the 160. So it's going to reduce us here actually to 9.6 hours of leisure, or 6.4 hours of labor. I believe that's the trade-off. And so as we look at this, we've seen that our leisure hours have actually increased as our overall income remained constant, but our wage increased from 20 to 25, which then, in the way that we look at this equation, a change in hours divided by a change in wage, presuming income remains constant, is going to equal some positive change in leisure hours with some positive wage, which is going to equal positive, and that's greater than 0, because we saw that it caused some increase in our hours of leisure.